Hey fam, welcome back to the Prosperity Pathways podcast. My name is Erica Darshell, your host, and we're standing at the ultimate intersection of systems, scalability, and true asset ownership. Today, we are exploring what it looks like to literally buy back the block and move from manual corporate grind to sovereign ownership. Our guest today is a massive powerhouse in the DMV real estate ecosystem. He went from excelling on the Division One football field to dominating corporate human resources as a SHRM 30 under 30 executive. But when he heard his ultimate calling during the pandemic, he stepped out on pure faith, went full time into real estate, got featured on HGTV's House Hunters, and founded Block Shoppers to help everyday families construct long-term asset-backed legacy. Please welcome to the Forge, Randy Lewis. So, how are you today, Randy?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for the introduction. I feel like I'm somebody.
You are somebody. Everybody is somebody.
Thank you for having me.
No problem. So, for those who are just meeting you, can you tell us a little bit about your story before we dive deep into your blueprint?
Yeah, absolutely. So, where do you start? I'm Haitian American. My parents immigrated here from Haiti. So, I grew up in a Haitian household, lower income, and growing up, I didn't apply myself in school early on. And I had those labels like special ed, somebody who needed to be on IEPs. And so growing up, childhood, wasn't the best student that growing up in that kind of household, my parents, they were big on academics and, that was something that they really stressed. But fortunately, was able to develop some athletic abilities, which allowed me to end up getting a full scholarship to school in Ohio, Youngstown State University. When I got school on a football scholarship, my first year, they decided to redshirt me, which meant, I didn't have to play that first year. So, saw there was an opportunity because I essentially had 5 years of eligibility. So what I did was I bust my butt. I worked hard in the classroom and I was able to graduate in 4 years. So I had an extra year of eligibility left. So I ended up playing my last year. I ended up graduating and getting a master's degree through football scholarship. Had sights on playing professionally in the NFL and stuff. However, that didn't work out. And so, I transitioned back into the real world, right? And so transitioning into the real world from college, it was definitely a struggle at first. I'm thinking I'm coming home with a master's degree and I'm young and thinking it's just going to be, momentum from the gate, but that didn't happen. I entered the workforce, didn't really have much experience, but, eventually got into an HR position. And then from there, my HR career took off. As you mentioned, I got 30 under 30. At the time, I also got a mentor, and my mentor told me to invest in real estate. And so I went through this program called NACA, and NACA ended up allowing me to purchase a multifamily unit in 2016 in Washington, D.C. And I came to closing with only like $2,000 out of my pocket, but they made me save like so much money. And so at the end of the program, I had a 4-unit building where I was able to live in one unit and have the tenants pay my rent and still make some money. I still have my savings intact. And then that's what kind of prompted me to get my real estate license, because I'm like, wow, this is an amazing program. How come everyone doesn't know about it? And so I quickly realized a lot of real estate agents, at that time, because NAC is a process, they weren't really pushing it. They, want that instant gratification. People just go get a loan and, just get approved for whatever terms. But for me, I'm like, no, this is an opportunity. And so got my license. I helped my cousin purchase the building on the same block than my friend. And then, at some point we were talking, I'm like, man, we're really like buying back the block. We're block shoppers. And then from there, my company kind of started Block Shoppers. And, we've grown. We've helped so many people. We've done over 100 million in real estate sales and just really helping people purchase homes, build, generational wealth through real estate, which we know is one of the foundations to building wealth.
Yes. Yes, exactly. That's an amazing story. And sounds like I need your help. So we'll talk about that after because that's what I want to do. And I actually never heard of that program either until I was doing the research into you. And I was like, I've never heard of that program. And oddly enough, it sounds like something my mom probably heard of
Uh-huh.
and used to buy her first and or second house because she bought a house, she had it built and everything, moved straight into buying her first house from Section 8.
Okay.
So, and my mom is definitely one of those people that looks into these different programs. So I guarantee if I mentioned it to her, she'd be like, yeah, that's what I used. Okay. Yeah. So speaking of growing up in Washington, D.C., as a child of Haitian immigrant parents, what were some of the earliest lessons you observed about the value of a dollar, hard work, and what it actually takes to win?
Yeah, that's a great question. Just having my parents who, they came into a country where they didn't speak that language and just seeing them, learn the language and then, outside of all the other obstacles we have and in the world, they were able to navigate that. My father, he was an entrepreneur. He started his transportation company and he'd be working like from it felt like from 6 a.m. to like 2 a.m., and so, but he would come home and make sure that we were doing what we needed to do. My mom just working full-time job, coming home, cooking 6 days a week. And so, just seeing them put the work in, never really complain, and just try to provide for us and put us in the best positions. It was, definitely an example. We were lower income, but my parents were big on education. So we would go to we were in private school, which was like a middle school, elementary and middle school. That private school was about like 45 minutes away, a commute, right? And so they were like sacrificing just to put us in the best positions. And then, living in Gaithersburg, I lived in Gaithersburg, Maryland, and I went to high school at the Mather Catholic High School, which is in Hyattsville, Maryland. So my commute was like an hour in high school. So all that was, testimony for my parents' hard work and what they kind of instilled in us. And so, really, for us, one thing my parents always instilled in us was nobody can take your education away from you. And, at the end of the day, you have to be real. You have to look at yourself in the mirror and, constantly evaluate yourself and make sure that you're trying your hardest. And they would say, as long as you know you tried your hardest and, you put your effort into anything, then like that's all you can ask for. So, they set a great example and it's never ending because here I am now as an adult and I watch them how they parent and it's like I'm still learning from my parents, even with the kids and just how they move in their older ages. So, they've done an amazing job and, I just hope to be like them.
Yeah, it sounds like they taught you the sacrifice and the grit that you needed to be able to achieve what you have. And I love hearing that is whenever you have parents that actually lead a good example, it's always the best case scenario because there's the alternative where you have to erase and rewrite all of these bad habits, but you started with good habits, and that's wonderful. So you had a successful trajectory lined up, and you still do. But you had a successful trajectory in corporate human resources, even earning your national accolades. So,
Mhm.
what was the exact moment or turning point that made you realize the traditional corporate path wasn't enough to fulfill your purpose?
I would say early on, honestly, because when I first, it was a struggle to get an HR job, and then once I finally got it, I was doing well, like right away, and everyone's like, "Oh, man, you have a future in this," but I wasn't fulfilled. I would go to work, and it was easy to me, and I was getting promoted, I was getting all the recognition, but it just I didn't love it. When I woke up, I'm like, okay, I'm going to work and it just, I didn't have that same passion that I felt when I was playing sports. And so that was something for me. I'm like, I wanted to find something that would still give me that passion, right? That same fire, every wanting to wake up every day and like be better at that. And so I think going in early on, it was that. But as I started moving up the corporate ladder and like I received the recognition And, I was proud of the recognition being 30 under 30 in the entire United States, but it was just like, wow, okay, I can get this recognition and be considered one of the best in HR in the world, but like it's still not like satisfying for me. So like for me at that time when I did get that recognition, that's when I had bought my first property, and I was like more excited about the property than the recognition of being 30 under 30 in the entire United States. I have all these HR professionals. And so that kind of I started realizing like, okay, I think my passion is in this. And then once I got my license and I started helping people get homes, and I was just like, man, I felt like I'm actually doing this is rewarding. That's when I kind of realized this is kind of where I need to be right now, at least in this moment. And so I didn't jump out there right away because I'm like, okay, being a real estate agent, it's your entrepreneur, and so it's not a guaranteed check. So before I decided to transition into it full time, I'm like, you know what? I got to set myself up financially to the point where if I don't make a sale in real estate for my first year, I will still be able to pay my bills, do what I want to do. And so, you know, I waited about 3 additional years to really like jump into it. And it just happened to be the pandemic where the pandemic let me work from home and, I could still work on my real estate business. And once I really put more into my real estate business, that's when I kind of like took off, skyrocketed. So from there, I was just like, you know what? I think I'm going to retire from this corporate life and like be a full-time entrepreneur.
That's actually a really awesome story because that's how a lot of people found their passion is in the pandemic when you were allowed to work from home. So you actually have the time to try to slide off to the side and do some other stuff because you're at home. You're not in the corporate environment where you can't necessarily pull up YouTube on a separate device while you're in a meeting or something. You can't sit here and just for example, stitch something together while you're in the middle of a meeting. There's people who clamor towards Etsy and all kinds of things because there are things they already did in their free time as hobbies they were passionate about. And it helped bring it to fruition and it helped it be something that you can monetize. And a lot of people didn't take advantage of that time, but I'm glad I did too, because that's when I found my passion because I dove into platforms like Social Proof Podcast and Earn Your Leisure. And that's what made me dive deeper into financial literacy because it was already a passion of mine. I just didn't know where to find that information. So it was a big help. I was like in the pioneering group of DWO when that was out. And then and I wish I would have chose Earn Your Leisure because anyway, I'm on the Earn Your Leisure bandwagon. It's just I spent a lot of money with that one. And I learned a lot. It's just no, I won't go into it.
Yeah.
Because there's controversy there. It is. There's controversy there. That's why they kind of fell out also. So it sounds like you made a big transition from a steady paycheck to the corporate environment and you did it correctly. A lot of people skip that step of having that nest egg so that you can make that smooth transition, including myself. Of having that nice nest egg, I really just wanted to jump out there. I knew I didn't have the nest egg and I was like, I'm going to make this work. And so I'm making it work. I'm getting there.
Yeah. I'm saying this like, it for me, I was fortunate enough to recognize it early on, right? And so I was like preparing for it. And like literally when the pandemic happened, like I was almost at like my breaking point. I was able to like do it. It was just like divine timing, right? But like sometimes as ideal as that sounds, like you got to prioritize your health and things of that nature. There's other like factors that go into it. So like, yes, ideally that that's the best way to do it, but that's not always going to be the case because there's so many other circumstances that you may need to because stress and just like kind of stuff that's going on in life, so
that was my case. Yeah, that was definitely my case where I just had to make that giant leap because just as a side note, the company I was working for I still had two jobs I had to go to every day during the whole pandemic. Everybody clamored about the essential workers, the firefighters and the nurses, but the people who were working in fast food were still going to work because you're still ordering DoorDash while you're stuck in the house. I still have to go to work. And I was working for FedEx. The two most essential
Right.
My goodness, FedEx picked up so much. It was like Christmas all over again. We just ended Christmas rush. They scaled back my hours for maybe about 30 days. And then we got bum rushed because everybody had to stay home now. And so now I'm doing 8 hours at Boston Market and 12 hours at, yeah. So no sleep.
Oh, that's
I
crazy.
could make it. Yeah, it was crazy. And I realized how much I was pushing myself, and I was like, something had to change. And so I moved back up here to the DMV area where I know there's opportunities no matter what.
Right.
This is a place you definitely can pull yourself up from the ground if you're willing to do so.
100%. There's so many opportunities. I tell people all the time. It's just, putting in the work, making sure you're in the right rooms, and it's possible for sure here.
Yeah. So my next question, what was the absolute biggest psychological shift you had to make to step out on faith into full-time entrepreneurship?
I think you said the biggest psychological. Oh, that's a great question. I think just dealing with like imposter syndrome, and for me, I know even when I was doing corporate America, it was like I would have it sometimes. But I'm like, man, I'm like, am I like this good at what I'm doing? And like, when I had to, but I didn't have it so much, right? Because it's just, you're still getting mentored, and there's a lot of like, in the corporate world, at least in my situation, a lot of people were like, they saw the potential, and like they were like intentionally pouring into me. And so making sure I was like, you know, on the right trajectory, right? And so as an entrepreneur, it was up to me. I wake up, if I decide not to like put in the work, if I decide not to, you know, do the necessary things to grow my business, then it's not going to happen. And so I think like the imposter syndrome when I was doing real estate and like being one of the top 15% agents. And it's like, for me, because I played sports my entire life, you're like always critiquing yourself. You're always like working out. It's like no days off. And so like, I've always taken that into the work environment, but like as an entrepreneur in real estate, it's like, you have idle time if you kind of want to. And so like there would be times where I'm like, man, I'm not working hard enough. How am I getting this 15%? I might not do, like it was like a battle in my brain. And I think like after I had like my first year when, I did, really well in real estate from a sales standpoint, it was like, okay, that was a fluke. In my head, like what happened, it was just like a constant battle, right? And so that was
Yeah.
one of the things I had to like kind of figure out like how to combat that and make sure that, I'm critiquing myself, but I'm also like acknowledging that like I do have a gift. I am supposed to be having success. I will do it again if I just do the right thing, put the right work in, and just go about it the right way. And so I think that was probably, I would say, the biggest like psychological shift.
Yeah, I definitely agree because that was a big thing for me. Even when it came to this podcast, it's a lot of times you feel like people are just gassing you up.
Right.
Yeah, you did a good job. And then sometimes it just feels like, did I really, or are you just saying that? Like,
Hmm.
did I just get a participation sticker, or am I really good? And that 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 is the hardest part for most people, and that's what I commonly hear because I feel like it's because we're only human. We're always most critical on ourselves. So as much as you might hear somebody, even like bullies, for instance, as much as they go at somebody else, just imagine what they're saying to themselves in their head.
Right. Hmm.
It's like they're going through he double hockey sticks in their head right now. And so you just have to have a little empathy for people and just I always try to point out something specific that I did so that way I can make sure I'm keeping myself in check. Like, yes, you did this and you did it all by yourself, or yes, you got a little bit of help with it, but you did it.
Right.
And still give yourself that pat on the back so
Hmm.
that you're not dependent on everybody else saying it. And because when everybody else is saying it You second guess it. Oh,
Right. Right.
it's like, are you just being nice?
Right. Yeah, you gotta give yourself grace.
Yes. So when you looked at the landscape of the DMV and saw the massive gap in wealth distribution when you started in real estate, what exact problem did you see that made you realize block shoppers needed to?
I it wasn't enough minorities, buying homes. And like, I would look at like a lot of my, friend group and just like coworkers and, talking to them. It was like, yeah, they were still renting. Even it didn't matter the age, like I had coworkers that were, same age as my parents and like, they didn't own their house and things of that nature. Like just talking to them, it was like, why would I want to own a house? I mean, I have to, worry about maintenance and pay an HOA fee and things of that nature. And it dawned on me, like, I think because in our communities, a lot, oftentimes, it's not every household, but like we don't talk about money. We don't talk about like investing, having those conversations. I think that was like a big part of it. And so, me being able to purchase, a multifamily unit on a $40,000 salary, right? And where it was not like I was making like all this money. And it was like, wow, I only brought $2,000 of clothing. It wasn't like I didn't spend a lot of money. I see people with $2,000 shoes, right, at designer. So for me, it was like this is
Yes.
definitely achievable. It's just about the knowledge, having that information, the know-how, how to. And so for me, it was like, you know what? There's definitely a gap here, and I'm gonna go into my HR bag where like I've been trained to like, do change management, organizational structure, and things of that nature. And so I'm like, you know what? How can I use my HR skills to like start educating, our people about this NACA program and these different products where it is doable. You may have to sacrifice a little bit. It might not take you, it took me 6 months, but it might take you a year, it might take you 5 years, but there's a roadmap to this. Real estate is pretty like, black and white. There's not too many gray areas. If you do X, Y, and Z, this is the outcome. And so, I would have those conversations. And for me, I'm like, there's a gap, but there's a solution because with home ownership, that's you need somewhere to live, and that's a way where you're building equity for something that's a necessity, and then if you understand how to like leverage equity and that can help enhance your lifestyle.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. Home ownership is something that a lot of people stray away from for the things that you mentioned. Either they're not knowledgeable about the process, they're just afraid of the process period, they don't want to have to maintain their own home. That's really why it's like, because renting, you can call somebody to fix stuff. You can call somebody when you have a pest. But when you own it, you have to make sure all that stuff gets done. You have to call it and you have to pocket the cost as well. And so a lot of people aren't prepared for that type of
Mhm.
situation because they can barely handle their situation when they're renting. If the car breaks down, they can't get it fixed. So if you can't even get your car fixed, then yes, you probably shouldn't be getting a house yet. So speaking of that, right? You spoke on using the NICA, which is the Neighborhood Assistance Corporation of America. Did I say that?
Right. Mhm.
And you max out closing cost assistance for families who need it. And from a wealth building perspective, why is low money down multifamily real estate ultimate hack for everyday buyers? And now I'm not asking personally because I personally know why.
Right.
My first property is going to be a multifamily home, and
Right.
I see so many. I live in Southeast. There's so
Yeah.
many gems.
Oh my God. Yeah. All of mine are in Southeast and in certain subdivision, and that could be offline. But yeah, nah. I mean, it's for me, it's a life hack because you know, anytime, especially going through a program like NACA, where you don't have to put that much down, like it's really little to no, like your NACA, you're only paying your property taxes for 1 year up front, which makes it like not that much money. But the other piece of it, they make you save. So you're saving, and then at the end you have money. So you have money for reserves in case of, you have to fix something, or, a rainy day. So like that alone prepares you, right? But then being able to buy a multifamily where, you have other tenants that will help you pay your mortgage, right? And so if you identify the right property, and if the numbers make sense, the numbers have to make sense. You can't just be buying anything just because you have a multifamily. That might not be the best situation, right? But if you do it the right way, you know, you can end up not having to pay anything like your mortgage or anything. So like that alone will, if you're working, I'm sure you'll be working, of course, but now the money that you would have been paying for your mortgage or rent, now you have that money coming into your pocket, right? And so if you save that money, now that gives you an opportunity to, one, buy another property at some point. It could be an investment property, or, maybe a home that you actually want to, live in with your family down the line, or invest in a business. But now you're not spending money on typically what's your largest, expense is where you live at. So if you don't have to worry about spending monthly funds on typically what's your largest expense, now that opens up a whole different opportunity for you. And so that's why I like multifamilies, because you have more units to make money. And so in DC, or just period, anything under 4 units is considered residential. So you can buy up to 4 units. So you could buy, and I bought a building with mine. So I lived in 1 unit, and then I had 3 other tenants. And we know we're in DC, rent is high. So NACA also has a below the market interest rate. So if you were to go to a traditional bank, let's just say PNC, I love PNC, but then you go through a NACA program, if the rate at PNC is 6%, NACA is going to be at 5%. And so that alone saves you money every month. And then over the course of 30 years, you're saving money as well. But then there's also no mortgage insurance. Mortgage insurance is essentially like an extra tax. When you use a low down payment, most lenders make you pay like insurance because you're paying a lower down payment. So NACA, there's none of that. So essentially you're saving money every month on your mortgage by going through the NACA program. And so ultimately you have this property that you've saved money on, you have reserves in your account, and then you have tenants that are paying your mortgage. And then in some cases, they're paying your mortgage, but you're also making money. So imagine your tenant's paying your mortgage, but then you also are getting $1,000 back every month. So now that, again, that gives you another opportunity where you can invest in another vehicle to build wealth.
Exactly. That's why it's like you have to buy a cash. It gives you an extra stream of income.
Right.
And instead of instantly thinking of it as a burden, oh, I have to make sure I get everything fixed and all that. Yes, that comes with it, but it's an extra income stream. You can still go to work every day. And if you get hurt and you can't go to work, and you don't have the money saved up, there's still income coming in from these other units that can help you supplement your income while you're out. Multiple streams of income has always been the biggest life hack for financial literacy that most of us don't even tap into at all. They just want one good job for the next 20, 30 years because that's what their parents have always told them. And that usually doesn't cut the mustard. As you said, there's people, and I have a neighbor whose house is going up for auction and she's in her 80s. I thought she owned that house because she was an older lady. I just assumed that most of the older people that I saw in their homes owned it, but now I'm realizing there's a lot of people who don't. And it's actually kind of sad to me that you can be in that type of position where I guarantee she wouldn't be put out on her bum because she has like 8 kids or something. So at least one of them should take her in, or they should take turns taking her in. But just period, to be in that position, it's wild to me.
Yeah.
Because I haven't grown up in the most financially literate family, but I have seen generational wealth. The house that my mom grew up in, my grandma grew up in, my great grandma's husband built. My great grandfather built that house, lived on that land. The house that was right behind that house, that's on the next street over, that piece of land was given to my Uncle Maurice, which was one of his sons, when he got married. And him and his wife built that house. Of course, when they got divorced, the wife got the house. And then directly across the street from her is my other grandma. My family lives. I could walk through one yard and go to the other one. Exactly the way I'm describing it. And so my grandma, her house was built by her husband and his brothers and her brothers, because we got a brick mason in the family, we got an HVAC person in the family, we got plumbing in the family, and you all come together and build a house. Generational wealth,
Right.
that I've seen firsthand, but I've also seen the gap, because this was 3 generations ago that I've seen somebody do it. Has anybody done it in my generation or directly before me? No. And so that's where I see the gap. It's like, I see how they were doing it. We were doing generational wealth. We knew it. It's just there was this span of time where people were not taught or didn't experience. And so that knowledge and know-how was not passed on.
Right.
Yeah. So,
but here's the beauty of it. You can still achieve it, right? So it's like, it's just getting the mindset and like figuring out it's never too late. You know, I have clients that are in their 40s, 50s, they're just buying their homes. And I'm like, okay, that's how you do it. It's never too late.
Yeah. Never think it's if until you're in the ground, it's never too late.
Right. Right.
Yeah. So you've scaled your real estate mission from DC to Atlanta and now into Los Angeles. So, from an operational standpoint, how do you handle the pressure of managing real estate transactions and developments across multiple time zones without burning yourself out?
I'm not gonna lie, I'm burnt out. But I mean, I think, like you said, systems for sure. And I'll be frankly honest with you, I'm still like refining my systems. And I think there's some things that I know I can do better. And shout out to AI. I'm working on incorporating AI and stuff into my business. But one thing for me is really creating a network and an ecosystem of trusted and reliable people. And so for me, doing business in different states, I've had to find kind of the right people that I can rely on and kind of train them and onboard them on the way that we do things. And then from there, it's given me some success. There's always some challenges, but I think what's allowed us to have success in other states is really just finding the right people that are aligned. And I think again it goes back into my HR bag where that's kind of what I had to do, kind of evaluate talent and ensure people understand kind of the line of sight what the end goal is. And so I think that's what I would say: hiring the right people and then kind of giving them a clear roadmap of what we're trying to do, how do we get there. Here are our SOPs. Here's how we, communicate. Here's how we measure success, our KPIs, and then from there, um, it's been pretty successful.
Yeah, painting that clear roadmap for your team definitely helps. And incorporating AI. Shout out to my company, Flow Out Forge. So if you need it, like we said, we have some discussions we have to have after this interview, because I would love to help you implement some more agentic systems into your workflow and your operations to help you be more efficient. Because that's what Flow Out Forge does. We help founders integrate AI and workflow automation so you can be more efficient. Because at the end of the day, AI is not the thing that's going to take people's jobs. It's not there to take away from you being a human. It's supposed to help amplify what you can do. And it helps fill in those gaps of stuff that has you stuck in a screen so that you can free yourself up to talk to people and do more people-centric things. That's the whole purpose of it. That's what I always tell people. So like we just stated, it's a grind. Real estate can easily become a 24/7 manual grind of cold calling, touring, and chasing paperwork. So how have you integrated technology or automated workflows to ensure your business runs like a machine? rather than a solo hustle? Even though I know you have a whole team. And so what kind of systems have you put in?
I mean, right now, really we get like a CRM that's been pretty helpful. And so, I mean, honestly, again, I've always been kind of like very hands-on, and now that I'm doing more, like I could be very transparent with you. I feel like I'm integrating this now, and it's still relatively new. And I think that's one of the things I wish, if if I could go back and say like 2 years ago, I wish I like, if there's something I wish I had done, I wish I had done that then when I had a little more time. But I would say the CRMs, the AI. Have been, playing around with the different, Claude and the different software. I've been having conversations about establishing AI agents and figuring out what the best way to go about it. And for me, again, I just want to make sure I like thoroughly understand it before I just throw it into my business, because I do realize a lot of my clients, they work with me because it's me and like kind of the way I do it. So like just trying to figure it out now, like like how I can do it and feel fully comfortable with it. But for right now, we have our CRMs in place, and that's pretty much it.
So with that being said, do you have a personal system for keeping your high value relationships warm without dropping the ball besides the CRM? Because I know CRMs are hard
Mhm.
to maintain. And
Yeah.
that's why I'm actually developing an app to help people keep
Mhm.
those relationships warm outside of using a CRM, because a CRM is something you have to maintain. Most of the time, you have to go to your laptop to do it. And that's inconvenient for most of
Mhm.
us. We have our phone in our hand most of the time. So that's more convenient.
Yeah, no, I mean, right now, what I pretty much do is, we have our mailing list where we're constantly sending kind of information. We do a lot of events, master classes, so we engage them that way. Obviously, social media, I have a community within my social media where we're like, sending information, but that, to a degree, that's pretty much it. And so I recognize like that's an area where we want to get stronger in, and, kind of help take that take our business to the next level.
Okay. So that's exactly what I was saying about AI. It's like it helps
Mhm.
pull you out of the office and into the actual in front of people to help make that impression. And just coming back to the Prosperity Pathways podcast, where my focus heavily is on moving away from just chasing a paycheck and building actual legacy. So, for the families who are starting from zero real estate knowledge, how should they look at their first property as a legacy asset rather than just a place to sleep? Like, how can you frame that for them?
Yeah, it's definitely a legacy. I think, what I always say, the easiest way to look at it is everyone needs somewhere to live, and that's the most important thing. One of the most important things outside of water and eating and all that stuff, but like you need somewhere to live. And so that is the foundation. And so if you have safe and stable housing, that like, solves a lot of problems, right? And so I would just look at it from that standpoint, a necessity. And if you know that you could buy a home and if you're able to make the payments on time for 30 years or less, that's a roof that kids can have at the very least, right? And then the bonus is, if you are paying on time and you're making sure you take care of it, that now you're building real wealth. Now that becomes part of your net worth, right? And that becomes an asset. And so now you generated an asset from a necessity. You need somewhere to live anyway. So why not buy a home where you need somewhere to live and put your family, your kids in a situation where they know they at least have this home at the very least, and then leverage that to also then invest and maybe buy another property. And then from there, you could build a portfolio and you could have a whole estate. So I think I don't think I think that's the easiest way I would put it. And I think that alone is what a lot of these families, that we see in history who are running the world. They have these estates, they have trust, they've built the foundation through real estate. And so, it's doable. Anyone can buy real estate. It's here for everybody.
That's very true. And then also back to what you said, by buying a home, you have a place for your family, no matter what, especially if you don't teach them about anything else when it comes to financial literacy. If you teach them about real estate and maintaining a home, and it's the same way as teaching somebody how to maintain a car properly. It'll last for generations. And that's actually real estate is actually a passion of mine also, only because, well, not even only, it's always been a passion. Like when I was 12, 13, 14, 15, I'm watching HGTV all day. But HGTV and music videos, that was my list. But it's very passionate to me because I have been chronically homeless throughout my life, twice as a child and twice as an adult. And then last week, I was at the National Alliance to End Homelessness Conference. So I
Hmm.
was part of the press for that. So I'm finishing up an article for that, and I'm going to make a few posts throughout this week about it because it was a very intriguing conference. There's a lot of stuff that people should be knowledgeable about, and I already know there's a lot of bias and stigmas about unhoused people, homeless, whichever term you want to use to make you feel comfortable, because that's what all these changes in terms are. It's
Mhm.
like stop using ex-con and say returning citizen. What am I returning from? I was always here. So it's
Mhm.
all of these different terms to make other people feel comfortable. What about the people that are actually going through it?
Right.
If you're actually giving understanding and empathy to the people that are actually going through it, then you can fully devote yourself and advocate for them.
Right.
That's just my stance on it, period.
Spot on. 100%.
Yes. So, my next question, what are the biggest financial and asset mistakes you see people making when they finally get access to capital and or real estate, and how do you guide them away from those traps?
I think I would say I think I've seen people get approved for an amount and buy the big glamorous house and take on that huge mortgage when it's really not necessary. It might be it's a single person. Like, do you really need a 5 bedroom, 2 car garage, 2,500 square feet, taking on, a $4,000 mortgage? And so fortunately, a lot of my clients do go with my advice, and I think that's why I like, there's a lot of great realtors out there, and a lot of amazing. They're doing amazing, and so, but we all, for me, my niche has been NACA and people kind of buying with that mind set of generational wealth. But I've had a few clients I can count on one hand that kind of decided not to go with what my traditional client will do. And they come back a year, 2 years later, and they're like, I want to sell this home. Like this, it's too much house. And while you may have a fixed rate, your mortgage may go up, because of insurance and taxes and things of that nature. So you start at 4,000, now you're at 4,300, 4,400, and it's like, oh wow, like this is a lot. And so I think you don't have to, just because you get approved for an amount, you don't have to spend that entire amount. You still have to understand that life can happen, and you really want to make sure that you can truly afford that mortgage. If you're without work for 6 months to a year, can you still pay that mortgage, right? And so I think a lot of times that's one of the biggest financial mistakes I see people, especially when they're buying a home, is like trying to look the part where your first home is not necessarily going to be your forever home, And so I think being intentional with the purchase, buying what you can afford, and thinking about the negatives, the worst thing that can happen, and making sure that you're also thinking about that, or in the event that I need to rent, like what happens if I want to sell this home or I lose my job? is this home rentable, right? Am I in an area where people are going to be able to rent? Like, just taking everything into consideration when they're making that decision. I think that I would say that's probably one of the biggest mistakes I see.
Yeah, critical thinking, being a little pessimistic when you go into it because you need to fully understand what you're getting into, not maxing yourself out.
Right.
A lot of people struggle to live below your means if they've even heard it at all, to even know to do so. Because that's the key to it, is living below your means. Every time you get a promotion doesn't mean you need to upgrade your life or your car. It really doesn't. Every time you get a big bonus doesn't mean you need to spend a percentage of it. It really doesn't. Like money, every time money touches your hand doesn't mean it has to go back out. Like I said on my last couple of podcasts, is I'm trying to fix my vocabulary so that I no longer say money and just say currency instead. Because the more you use the term money, the more you keep associating it with just using it to buy or pay for stuff.
Right.
And when you say currency, that puts you more into a mindset of, my money needs to flow, it needs to circulate, it needs to move, it needs to work. Your money should go, every dollar you make should make you 2 or 3 or more, if possible. Yes, you can spend a percentage, maybe 1%, buy yourself a candy bar and keep it moving.
Right.
Like living below your means, making those sacrifices for yourself, especially when you're a single person, that's the perfect time to make those sacrifices. Like my mom used to ask me, I would make so many sacrifices. Oh, why do you always like living with people? It's not about me liking living with people. It's about me liking the money in my pocket.
Right.
It's like, I don't,
Look, I'm telling you, I remember when I came home from school and, I was, like I said, it took me a little while, probably like 6 months to get a job, but I got a job. And like I was living at home with my parents, and all my parents were renting, they're going to buy cars. And I'm like, my parents, if it was up to them, I'd still be living in, in their house, right? And that's what I would do with my kids, honestly, because my parents, like, I try to pay them rent, they're like, no, like, to save your money, stack the money. And so, that's another thing I would say too. If if you have parents that are willing to allow you to like stay under their roof before you, start your family and things of that nature, like I would do that because they're trying to give you that leg up, because that alone, again, paying that mortgage, that rent, that's typically your most expensive payment, right? And so not having to do that and being able to stack, build a reserve, invest, and do the things that can really set you up for financial freedom, that's critical.
Yeah, that was one. I feel like that was one of my biggest, is jumping out of, because for high school I was living with my grandmother. Is leaving my grandmother's house too early. I could have stayed a little bit longer. I should have stayed longer because I would have been set up, because I had the proper skills and I was doing the right things. But then I started hanging out with people that made me want to not. Why are you still staying with your grandmother? And what are you saving that money for? It's not doing anything. And I listened when I shouldn't have.
Right.
So we learn our lessons. We live, we learn, right? And that's why affordable housing and things like that are important. Going back to, you have a mission to build more affordable housing in major cities. So how does aligning your business model with true community impact actually strengthen your long-term brand equity?
Oh, man, I mean, I think community is everything, honestly, and that's really what my like business is based off of. Like when you do good, I'm big on like when you do good for the universe, you get back tenfold, right? And so we're mission driven, even like with NACA, just like it's a process to go through NACA, right? And so it takes time. And that's why a lot of people don't want to deal with it. But like our mission is like, we're gonna put you in the best position to win, to be able to leverage these resources. And with affordable housing, I mean, I think that's what it is. It's making sure that people have the ability to be in homes equally, and still have the ability to, live and live a quality of life regardless of their income. And so, for us, it's just making sure that we're partnering with programs like DCHFA and these local entities and being that, that community partner with them to ensure that affordable housing is even, that communication is there. Because there's a lot of times people don't even know that there are opportunities. There are like these government assistance programs. With NACA, you can have a Section 8 voucher and purchase a home with your voucher, right? As income. And so, our block shoppers is just a matter of ensuring that, we have a seat at the table. We're talking with the, decision makers. We're being that advocate for the community and making sure that, we're the voice to ensure that it's always at the forefront, even when they're building these new sky rises and, these luxury apartments, that there is a percentage for people who need it, right? And so, that's kind of where we've always been aligned, and we're just constantly trying to make sure that we're the advocate, because we don't only deal with affordable housing, we're inclusive. We deal with everyone. We have professional athletes, we're doing luxury, but at the core, my passion is really there because I know, there's the stigma, and it's ensuring that we're the voice for them.
Yes, definitely. Just like DC has the HPAP program, I did my certification for that, and I have the IZO certificate and everything. I just have to find a spot to use all that stuff. But
Yeah, I had a client that went through IZ, and she has a beautiful spot. I'm like, yes, like, come on now, like we gotta get in the door by any means.
yeah, it's like people will get on the Section 8 program and just live off of that, but it that can't be your end all be all. We can't. But at the same time, I'm not going to make somebody feel bad for doing that because you didn't know any better either.
Right, the cycles, but again, what are we seeing now? They're cutting them now. They're cutting the funding. They're doing a lot. So, like, I think for anyone that's on it, it's like at some point it may get cut, and then what? So you want to make sure that you use it and know that it can be a stepping stone. And like I said, there's programs like NACA where if you have a certain kind of voucher, they'll allow you to use that to buy a home. So there's no excuses. Like,
Nope.
home ownership is for everybody. It needs to.
Yes. Yes. And we plan on having a big portfolio. Me and my son were talking about it earlier. It's like, I don't know if you've heard of, I think her name's Derica. I can't remember her last name. She's a land developer. I follow her religiously. She built a neighborhood and named the streets after her children.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's cool. That's the type of people I watch, and I model what I want to do after.
Yeah.
So, Randy, for my last and final question, what is one mindset shift, daily habit, or core lesson that you want to pass down to the next generation who are working to forge a better future for themselves?
I would say, no one is going to save you. I think, oftentimes people feel like, it's just going to happen like miraculously, like, success will come your way, or money, win a lotto, and for the small percent that happens, that's them. But like, you get what you put in, right? And so, social media is it's a love-hate relationship for me. I do a lot of business there. It brings me a lot of, income and money and things of that nature. However, when you watch it, people make it look like it's just so super easy and everyone's having success, and it just happens overnight. And that's not the case. And so if you want to be if you want to have a certain life for yourself, and you want to live and do things that you want to do, and whatever your goals are, it comes with surrounding yourself with the right people, the right network. Your network is your network. Putting in the countless hours, the work, like don't look at social media and think again people are just not working as hard as it's happening. No, they may not be showing how much work that they're putting in, but hard work beats talent, right? And so make sure that you're working at anything that you want to do. There's a 10,000 hour rule. Make sure that if you do something for 10,000 hours, you may be considered an expert, right? Make sure that you're putting in the work. You're constantly trying to do better, be better. And from there, I think you can accomplish anything, but nobody is going to save you. You have to put the work in.
Very true. There's a marketer, Derek Grace too. That's his favorite saying is nobody's gonna come save you.
Right. For real.
Yeah, nobody.
Nobody.
So that is the biggest. Is everybody thinks that people owe them something. Nobody owes you anything except for you to yourself. That even includes your parents. That honestly, they're helping you because they want to. But if they were dead right now, there's nobody else
Right.
that would even consider it. And they might if it benefits them as well.
Right.
And that's another thing people have to stop being afraid of when somebody wants something. Just make sure it's mutually beneficial.
Right.
Period. So we don't want just give, or take. You have to give and take.
Right.
Yeah. So builders, let that sink in. The plan, the systems, the strategic real estate acquisition, unbreakable community relationships. The result is absolute legacy. And a heartfelt thank you to you, Randy, for dropping the real world uncompromised receipts on the forge today.
Thank you for having me. This was amazing. Great questions. Very thought provoking.
Thank you.